Yes, we'll go ahead and call the Regional School Committee to order. January 6th, 6:30. Renee, can we do a quick roll?
Sure. Steve Owen,
Here.
Dean Fox,
Here.
Sherry Barron. Sherry, I think you're muted.
I'll get the hang of this again. Here.
Jennifer Blum,
Here.
Bob Clark, Laura Ramsden,
Here.
Will Sankowitz,
Yeah.
and Steve Sylvia, I do not see on at the moment.
All
Okay.
right. I'll ask the obligatory question if anybody else is recording the meeting outside of LakeCAM.
I would like to record it, but I need permission from Renee.
Do you need to be co-host again? I'm sorry.
Maybe. Yes, please.
There you go.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, LakeCAM is recording the meeting. Just a couple of housekeeping items with this being conducted over Zoom based upon the recent requirement changes by the governor for a few weeks. Any votes will require a roll call vote by the committee. And anyone speaking needs to have their video turned on as well as their name present. So anybody who wishes to participate in public participation will ask that of you as well. With that, I'll open up for public participation if anybody has any comments or questions. Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4 on the agenda, acceptance of minutes from 12/2/2020. I will entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go on to a quick roll to accept the minutes.
Steve Owen,
Yes.
Dean Fox,
Aye.
Sherry Barron,
Yes.
Jennifer Blum,
Yes.
Bob Clark. Sorry. Laura Ramsden,
Yes.
Will Sankowitz.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And the executive session, we'll go ahead and minutes, we'll go and table that to the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, is there anything that you would like to take out of order on this agenda, or should we go into item number 5?
I think we can go right into the 2 presentations tonight, Mr. Owen. I've seen both Mr. Macomber and Ms. Fay here. So if you'd like to, I can introduce the Director of Technology and we'll go right into our 2 presentations.
That's great. I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce and recognize once again, Craig Macomber, Director of Technology, has provided you a presentation tonight, and I believe he's going to share that screen, so others can see that as well. Craig, I'll turn it to you.
Great. Thank you very much for having me tonight. Let me see if I can actually share my presentation. So let's see.
I made you co-host, so
Yep.
you should be able to now. Andrea, I did as well.
All right. Is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes. And before you begin, Craig, Renee,
Sure.
I believe Mr. Sylvia just
Yep, I
jumped in.
just let him in.
Great.
Okay, good. Well, thank you much for this opportunity. My name's Craig Macomber, Director of Technology, and this is kind of my annual update for where we are with technology in the district. It's been quite a year, I'll say. I want to first start to recognize James Rollins, a longtime employee with us, technology department. He retired at the end of December this year. It's interesting. He had pretty much 2 careers. He retired as a Army after 30 years, and then he worked for us for 21 years. And so I told him he's going to have to find a 3rd career. So it'll be interesting to see what he does from now. We did conduct a search for a replacement network administrator. We put it out on School Spring. We had 21 candidates apply. We did 7 virtual interviews, and we narrowed that down to 3 finalists. And we just offered and accepted, Ryan Blanchard did. He was a former network administrator at Taunton Public Schools. He's been here for 3 days, and we've thrown him into the mix, and he's doing very well with our team. I'm looking forward to his contribution to our system here. So I just wanted to highlight that Jim has gone on to help the Veterans Administration. I think that's his next career. He's going to do some advising for them. So I just wanted to recognize that. I kind of broke this into our thought process around, kind of pre-COVID and what we did even in the fall of 2019 into the spring of 2020. Even before we knew we were going to have these issues with remote learning and things like that, we did add a second high-speed internet connection for the campus. So we kind of doubled the internet speed on the campus. We doubled the internet speed of the 2 elementary schools. They're kind of a separate connection, so we got them up to speed. We contracted for a new Wi-Fi system throughout the district. One of the driving forces behind that was our MCAS testing and more devices in our district and more Chromebooks. And so we knew we had an older wireless system based on older technology. So we put that effort in even before we knew we were going to have remote learning like this. So that was completed in pretty much installed in August and September of this year, and we've completed that project. We had planned for a replacement of Chromebooks out of 11 carts. So that's about 350 or so Chromebooks, even before we knew we needed more because they were expiring. We did some upgrade to our server hardware and our virtual environment. We added some older servers that we had to replace. We got that up to speed and up to the standard of today. We upgraded some servers to Windows Server 2019, our domain controllers, and we got a couple more to do at our elementary schools to get them up to speed. And then we also ran we got a grant from the state for a cybersecurity awareness training program. And so that we sent our staff through a series of 4 assignments throughout the calendar year. And they each assignment had an assessment to kind of test your knowledge. The intent of it was to remind employees to be careful with online systems, to be careful with your email, to be aware of any spam email that might dupe you into doing something wrong and compromising our systems here. So we had a pretty successful implementation of that this year. The idea was to continually remind our employees of the risk and the benefits of using our online technology. So I kind of labeled this post-COVID. Obviously, we're not past it, but I kind of, the March, April timeframe is when we kind of got hit with all this. And so at that point, we kind of jumped into the mode of how can we get computers into the hands of students that are remote for us. And back in then, if you remember, we were fully remote. So we loaned a bunch of Chromebooks out at that time. We ordered, we kind of decided that, if we're going forward with this program, we were getting close to implementing a one-to-one program anyway. So why don't we accelerate that? We ordered a bunch of Chromebooks, 1,000 or plus Chromebooks, and we implemented a Chromebook program for grades 6 through 12. We, in August timeframe, we passed out Chromebooks to 1,500 or so students at both FLMS and ARHS. We had some, once we started ordering these Chromebooks, we really realized almost the international supply of Chromebooks dried up pretty quick. We ordered a bunch of Chromebooks for students and for staff. We waited and waited and waited, and we couldn't get a vendor to supply us with those. So we actually ended up canceling those and ordering another batch of 300 students and 250 staff. So we kind of accelerated that and got those out. We handed out those Chromebooks to the staff just after the start of school in October. We then purchased, with those 300 Chromebooks we purchased for the students, we expanded our one-to-one program down to grades 4 and 5. So just after Thanksgiving, we did a kind of a drive-by handout at Grace 2, just like we did for the high school and the middle school. So all students grades 4 through 12 now have a Chromebook issued by our district for use remotely or in school. We also recognize the need for what do we do with our students K through 3. And we kind of decided as administration, we don't really want to implement a full one-to-one where the students are always carrying them back and forth and responsible for that device. So we basically bought 450 Chromebooks and split them up between the 2 elementary schools. And we put a group of Chromebooks in each classroom to accommodate the number of students that we anticipate will be in that classroom. So we understand that there's more students coming back at the earlier grades, so we put more in those classrooms. And we covered all the grades through grade 3 there. So if a student comes in for the week, they'll have a device to use in that school, in the classroom. We also, through CARES Act money, we ordered some 100 additional staff computers for the paraprofessionals and support staff. We also ordered 300 computers in anticipation of some expiring computers at the high school. I think the grades 11 and 12 got some older computers. We're trying to proactively replace those if we're going to continue this model of remote learning or even one-to-one program. We also added a tech support line for parents and students, Chromebook help at freelake.org. So if there's any problems with the device itself that we're issuing you, that would be the email to use. And then if there's other general help, like an account password or something like that, we have tech help at freelake.org. So we kind of sat back too, and I worked closely with Carol Lees, our new financial director, about plans for the future, where we're going to go with our purchases in the next fiscal years. We have an installed base of desktop computers for the staff. They're on their 6th year right now. We had talked about some replacements for those, maybe phasing those in over a couple of years. I actually got some breaking news that I haven't told Kara and Mr. Medeiros about, but our new hire says we may be able to replace some parts in the ones we got and save some money and still get some life out of them. So we may have to, we may be able to reduce that cost or buy more replacement parts to get more computers running for the staff. So, you know, just an addition like that, where we bring in a new employee, has some new ideas, we might be able to stretch our dollars a little bit more on that. We have an outdated data storage and backup system we're looking to replace. We did our Wi-Fi install, but you know, on paper we figured the coverage was complete, but when we actually installed it, you end up encountering things like double brick walls or a lot of metal in between here and there, and we don't get the coverage we want. So we may have a few more access points just to get complete coverage to our buildings. We've been, for the last 3 years, doing a projector upgrade, and it's basically just buying a group of projectors and kind of getting rid of our older inventory, replacing them with newer inventory so we can get those into the classroom. One big thing that the school committee really needs to think about, and we're thinking about, is we purchased quite a few computers this year. So again, Google kind of builds in a built-in expiration date, if you will, on Chromebooks, about 6 years. So we're going to have to plan for the replacement in FY23 through 28 of all the ones we've just kind of purchased. And what I'm trying to avoid is our district getting hit by a big, ticket purchase in 26 or 28. I want to kind of space that out so that we have a planned replacement, which is logical and financially sound as we go forward over the next several years. And the last thing we were talking about is, believe it or not, our wired infrastructure project that we did was done back in 2013. We're coming up on kind of a couple of years from now, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of that equipment. One of the things when we installed the wireless system was we could benefit from a new wired system. And so we're trying to see where we can fit that in our budgets out in 2 or 3 years, where we actually do a wired infrastructure replacement for our district. So those are the things we've been thinking about, kind of moving forward. I know I kind of went through quick with my presentation, but I'm willing to accept any questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. All right, there we go.
So Craig, Mr. Owen, if I may, Craig, thank you. Certainly Craig's had a different experience this year as the director of technology, like all of us here, and his interaction with staff and the community has even been probably greater. I think one of Craig's comments was in all his years, I think he has put more time into this past year in communication with stakeholders as it relates. But Mr. Owen, I'll turn it back to you. As Craig said, he'll certainly be happy to answer any committee questions, but I certainly just want to recognize him in this department. I think it certainly has served our students and our staff well during this challenging year.
Agreed. Any questions by the committee? Ms. Fox?
A quick question on your helplines. Have they had a lot of use, the Chromebook help and the tech help?
The use was early on, so we saw it in September, right? Once we started back to school, many TECA students had some issues, so we tried to help them through that's where I got it most. I did get phone calls right at my office, so it wasn't just the helpline. So people find my number, right? They got my number. But it's funny because Mr. Medeiros mentioned that. I mean, I meant that comment. I've talked to more parents this year than I have in the 20 years prior that I worked here. So, but it's been a great experience. We've tried to get the kids to the point where technology is not a barrier for them. So.
Okay. Anybody else from the committee? I did have a few. You answered the question about the number of support tickets coming through that. The cybersecurity piece, that's an ongoing issue. Do we have something related to that for any new employees that come on board? Typically, it's part of an onboarding process.
We could. The state is actually offering that grant if we want to apply for it again. I didn't want to necessarily, and I haven't spoke to Mr. Medeiros about this, put that on the current employees that already went through this 1 year of it. I was thinking of that though, for the new employees that we've got 30 or 40 or so that have come on board that have experienced that. It's something when we actually purchased a few years back and we ran a year program there. We let it lapse for a couple of years and then we brought it back with this grant. So I'd be open to trying to do that again.
Okay. You mentioned the backup. Is that being done on site, the backup?
Yes. There are local data that we back up, or Google data, obviously, that's in the cloud, and Google manages that, right? And we have a backup of that. We have a Google Vault that I have access to there. But as far as our local data, like a teacher uses a local Windows computer, they save something to a local network drive. That's what I'm talking about. That is a system that is not compatible with what we found was we had a difficult time making it compatible with our new server upgrade. And so that's why I'm targeting that as a potential upgrade. The backup we do in one server in one building, and we make a copy in another place in another building. So kind of have an off-site, if you will. So if we had a disaster in one place or a fire or something like that, right, we'd have a backup copy someplace else. We don't do off-site, if you will, off our campus right now, backup. So that's something that's why I mentioned that about a new backup system for us. Do we want to go cloud-based versus a local data system? So we've tried to do it where we have at least a second copy somewhere else physically on campus.
Okay. And then the last point, based upon the rough numbers and what you put in here, the rough numbers that we're adding for technology is approximately 2,300 plus new devices. So I am concerned about a plan, a budget, but I'm also concerned about the fact that we haven't added any staff to support that, right? So I will, from the school committee, throw that back to you, Mr. Macomber, about what's the plan, right? I know this is something we've talked about in the past, but how do we have a technology plan so we can budget appropriately? That should include staffing. I'm concerned that we're going to get all of these devices back in the summer, and we have a very short window to do some work on them, right? In a very small staff. So how do we overcome that? We have a talented group of high school students that are looking for things to do, especially in this time frame, that we could probably help with some of those things to do with the technology. So I would welcome that you go back with your team and come back with a recommendation to a time frame for a plan. How do we allocate, or what your recommendation is for replacing these 2,300 devices that will expire at some point, plus the other units that you've outlined in your PowerPoint presentation?
Well, actually, let me speak to the staffing level. We actually hired a temporary worker for us once we started in taking all these Chromebooks for us. Robert Brooks, he's been a great addition to our staff as a temporary employee right now. I've been in discussion with Mr. Medeiros and Carolise about potentially adding that as another employee in the district. We're talking about that as a entry-level technician that can help us with all these Chromebooks we bought. As far as the plan for replacement, that's where I've just started the discussion with the finance business department, right? And we've kind of plotted out, this is if we don't do anything different, this is what we're going to get hit with in charges down the road, right, through 2028. And so now we take that and we say, okay, how can we manipulate that a little bit? Do we pre-purchase this year? Do we delay a purchase to the next year? And so that's where the plan's coming together, right? We're trying to get the financial hit of this, if you will, right? We spent quite a bit, $500,000 or more this year at least, right, on Chromebook computers. We don't want to get hit with that in 2028. So
yeah,
that's kind of where we're starting with that process, right? Looking at it from a financial point of view.
And we'll need that because the funding is not going to come out of the operating budget, right? So we need to, and we can't go before the towns requesting what is probably going to be order of magnitude of $1 million over these years without some form of plan, some sort of strategy that goes along with that. And so, but that's where we need to be. So I would welcome feedback by you, Kara, the superintendent, as far as a time frame. What are we looking at here? What do we think would come out of operating? What do we need to have a different funding sources for? Because I would imagine by 26 and 28, CARES Act funding is not going to be around to try and do that. So I agree, the funding needs to be a top consideration, but there needs to be a plan behind that.
Okay.
Steve, if I can comment.
Sure.
So years 1 through 5, we're looking at a total of 415,000. If I take years 1 through 5, if I look at years 1 through 7, it's about 900,000. So you're correct with about $1 million assumption there. If I look at years 1 through 5, that would be an average of $83,000 a year. When I'm looking at the newly established technology revolving fund, which was established for repairs and or replacement of Chromebooks, year to date, we have collected $85,000 this year, and that fund was just established this year. So that could be one potential resource. So I just wanted to make note of that.
Yep. No, and Chromebooks is just one facet of it, but that's great information. But it's the server upgrades, it's the wired network upgrades. Those are not inexpensive by any means.
Sure.
Neither is a new backup strategy, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if any of these grants that we go with does have a requirement of truly an off-site backup strategy, right? A multi-generational, piece, whether we have two here in two different buildings and there's one truly off-site. I know a lot of those that deal with either federal money or state money that is built into requirement. So just different things that we need to take care of that. And I will say that, congrats to Mr. Rollins. He's had a long career here, and I know he has extended more than once his time here, and I know he has offered his services to get us in this transition plan. So very much appreciated, and I wish him luck in his next career, as you said, Mr. Macomber.
That's right.
Steve, I do. I was going to make one. I had a couple comments in remiss, but I also see, I believe, Mrs. Barron's hand up. So I don't know if before we get to my closing comments.
Ms. Barron.
I'm glad we're bringing up the plan, Mr. Macomber. I'm wondering, we get a ballpark of when that might be able to become available? I mean, are we talking weeks, months, a year? How soon can we kind of get an idea and start seeing the plan?
Well, I think what you're going to see is through the budget process is where that's going to appear. I did a technology budget plan 20 to 23, right? That's what their current plan is. But as far as planning for the purchase of equipment like that, that's going to appear in your budget presentations, right? That's where you're going to see the idea of where we fund this over the next several years. I just want to comment on Mr. Owen's thing about operating budget versus capital. Most of the stuff I presented, right, not Chrome or even Chromebooks in the out years, the next 3 or 4 years, and everything else except for the wired network upgrade, we feel we can get from our operating budget now. You know what I mean? We're not going to increase that much. We think we have enough funds to do that. The wired network may be like a capital budget or something like that, right? That's the big chunk of money there. But if we plan it right over the next, where are we? 2022, FY 2022 through FY 2028. I think we can cover most of what I'm talking about with our operating budget as it is, right?
Okay, we can take that offline in discussion. You know, we also need to move the needle forward, right? Just not replace what we have. We need to move it forward. In this particular case, there's a whole lot of new technology. I know there's been requests for technology integration specialists. You know what I mean? I think putting all of our eggs into the operating budget may not be the best course from a funding perspective, but let's take that offline and have a deeper discussion on that, because it's going to be a challenge. Mr. Sylvia, you had a question?
Yeah, just direct for Kara, just real quick. The creation of that technology fund, that was fairly recent. I remember the vote on that. And can you just repeat the amount that's already in that, and if that's at the expected level, or what's the vision for that?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, I believe it was voted on August 5th, 2020 to begin the fund. And year to date, we have revenue of $85,300.35.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before we turn it back to Mr. Medeiros? All right, seeing none. Mr. Medeiros.
Yeah, Mr. Owen, just very briefly, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Craig and his entire department. He's recognized them, but I also, my vision's a little blurry on the Zoom here, but Craig, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe our network administrator has also joined us here tonight. I just think, do I see Ryan Blanchard?
Yeah, I think you do see Ryan. He's there. Yep.
So I don't know, Ryan, if you just want to unmute and we welcome you. I know Craig recognized you early in the slide. This was not prepared. If you just like, you've been a great addition. You're a pretty talented person. We're happy to have you from Taunton. And if you hopefully have had a good start and experience and just would like to say a few words to the committee before we wrap up. Thanks.
How you doing? Nice to meet everybody and a pleasure. I look forward to working with everybody in the district and working with Craig and working on getting these upgrades done.
Thanks, Ryan. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Craig. Thanks so much. And Mr. Owen, we'll move into our next presentation if the committee is prepared, which is our food service director, Andrea Fay.
Hi, everybody. How are you? So I'm going to try and share my screen as well. Hopefully it goes as well as Craig's did. Okay. Good. Everybody see that? Hello, did I lose you?
And we can hear you, and we were seeing your screen, but you may have unshared
We
it.
did have the screen, Andrea, but just.
Okay, thanks.
I left.
Okay.
It's
Yes,
Let's
we can
try
see it.
Let's try this again. Okay. So just wanted to give you guys some highlights of stuff that we're doing this year. There's been obviously a lot of changes and a lot of things that are different this year than last year. So currently all schools are operating under what's called the seamless summer option, which is how we were able to serve meals in the spring as well. That originally was extended through December 31st, but the USDA extended it through June 2021, back in October, early November. So that allows us to serve 1 free breakfast and 1 free lunch per student per day. So all students are served breakfast and lunch at the free reimbursement rate. So at the intermediate school, Assawamsett and Freetown, the staff in each of those rooms, the teachers, the paras, they take a lunch order in the morning. And so then they enter it into a shared Google document that our staff in the kitchen have access to. And then they can see what each student orders, because although each student is served 1 free lunch and 1 free breakfast per day, we still have to assign that meal per student to make sure that they're not getting more than 1 lunch and breakfast per day. So each meal still has to be assigned to a specific student. So at those 3 schools, they get the Google document, they prepare the meals, and then the meals are packaged and delivered to each classroom for lunch. And at breakfast, the students pick up a grab-and-go breakfast on their way to class. At Assawamsett and Freetown, ever since kindergarten came back, half of the kindergarten is eating in the cafeteria and half of the kindergarten is eating in the classroom. And the same will be true when first grade comes back. In order to maintain the 6 feet of distance while they have their masks off, we'll have half and half. At the high school and the middle school, we are utilizing the cafeteria and the servery. The students eat at desks as opposed to your normal long cafeteria tables. At the high school, they have a QR code that the student actually, once they get their lunch and they go to sit down, they sign in with the QR code so they can know, so staff knows where they are at all times pretty much. As far as the remote meal pickup, like we did in the spring, we still have remote meal pickup on Tuesdays and Thursdays at both Freetown and Assawamsett. So those meals are for anyone under the age of 18. So students who are on remote learning, students are in the hybrid model, but it's just their remote week. Anyone under the age of 18 can get meals at that site, and the students actually don't even have to be there. That was another one of the waivers that they extended, that parents can pick up meals on behalf of students. So parents just pull up in the circle driveway at each school, and they let the staff member that's there know how many breakfast and lunch they need, and they get the meals and they drive away. Those we don't need to assign to a student. We just need to collect the number of meals that we served. The state gave us additional coronavirus relief funding based on meals that we served from April 2020 to December 2020. And so we ended up with an additional $5,131 that we were able to use to offset our costs above and beyond our reimbursements. And they allowed us, one of the allowable costs was staff labor when school was shut down, because it's labor that we wouldn't have occurred if we weren't serving meals. So we were able to utilize that funding, that the additional funding that they gave us. We also applied for the School and Community Meals Support Grant. And we heard yesterday that we did get the grant, but we only got $1,500 as opposed to the $2,200 that we requested, just because they had so many applications. They were only able to give us $1,500, which we'll still be able to use for carts to deliver the meals to the classrooms, and some different equipment that we need to be able to prepare the grab and go meals more easily. So like I mentioned, all meals are served at the free rate from the USDA, and that is through the end of June 2021. So it's $3.64 per lunch and $2.26 per breakfast. So if you, on the next slide, which is the budget slide, you'll notice an increase in direct costs, and that was mostly due to, we had to purchase additional buckets, essentially, that we deliver the meals in for each classroom. And also each meal is pre-packaged in styrofoam containers and contain individually wrapped utensils and condiments. So when a student picks up the box, each box is already a complete reimbursable meal. So we don't have to worry about training the aides in each room or the lunch monitors in each room to be able to identify a free and complete reimbursable meal. And if they're missing a component, once they pick up the box or pick up the bag, they have a reimbursable meal. We don't have to worry about that. Like I mentioned, we purchased additional bins for delivery to the classroom at Assawamsett, Freetown, and the intermediate school. And we also had to purchase additional carts so the staff could deliver the meals to the classrooms throughout the building. At the start of the school year, we reduced our food service staff from 22 staff members to 15. We did add 2 staff members back when kindergarten started. We will not need to add any more staff members back when first grade comes back. Those 2 buildings at Assawamsett and Freetown went from 2 to 3, which is what they had last year. So we don't need to add any more staff back when first grade comes back. This year, we're also utilizing the electable meal pattern waiver that the state applied for, and it allows us to serve 1 choice of milk with the meals that we deliver to classrooms. So we serve 1% white milk with all the meals that are delivered to the classrooms. In addition, the meal pattern waiver allows us to keep the current sodium requirements and the current whole grain requirements. Some meal pickup information from March to June. So we had meal pickup on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and families arrived at the middle school where staff volunteers. So we had volunteers from all 5 schools. We had teachers and principals and paras. We had lots of people volunteer to hand out meals. Mr. Medeiros did it multiple times. We had meal pickup on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the parents just pulled up into the circle driveway there and let us know how many students they needed meals for. And meals were either handed to them or loaded in their trunks, whichever option they wanted. We averaged around 100 to 125 meals a day, and that was 2 days worth of breakfast and lunch. So it was around 50 or 60 students that we actually were giving meals to a day. We had 2 staff volunteers that worked all the way from March to June. We had the same 2 volunteers work every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They worked through April vacation, they worked through normal holidays, and they continued working through the end of the end of June, which is beyond the end of the typical school year. So time when they would normally be off, they came in and they served they made all the meals, and we served a total of 2,495 meals, 2,495 meals. And the staff members really were great. They were there, they were all there all the time, and they never missed a day. So just some participation information for each school. You can see we went, our September participation was much lower than it is now. We're doing great now. Our biggest hurdle has been getting out the information that meals are free. So I've reached out to the PTOs at all the schools, and Barbara at the high school put it on Instagram there that meals for all students are free. And we still, even at the high school, we still get kids like even now that are like, wait, I didn't know lunch was free. So that's been our biggest hurdle is making sure that people know. We've put it on menus, and we've put it on the website. We put it a lot of places, and we've included it in a lot of information that went home, but we still find that people don't realize that meals are free. And at the high school, our biggest hurdle is that students can leave at noon, which is before the start of last lunch. So juniors and seniors are free to leave at noon, and anyone else that has a ride can leave at noon. So we've started encouraging students to grab a meal on their way out the door, and they can take it with them. They can eat it at home. But that's been our biggest challenge there, is to get those last 2 grades of kids that are leaving to come in and grab lunch before they leave. Financials through November 2020. This is my typical slide, but obviously it looks a little bit different this year. So we've served a total of 32,000 meals. This is again through the end of November, because we were in the middle of December when I made this slide. And you can see our total sales are much lower than normal, and our food cost is higher than normal because it's a function of sales. But our direct cost is the biggest increase, and again, that's attributed to all the extra packaging and things that we had to buy this year that we normally wouldn't. And then I just have some pictures of how our in-person meal service looks. So the first picture is at the high school, so everything's labeled so kids can come get it. And you can just see the hurdle or the feat that is serving the elementary kids. So we stack everything up so we can deliver kindergarten first. And we have, like I mentioned, we have 3 staff members at the 2 elementaries and 3 staff members at the intermediate school. So they split up throughout the building and deliver to each of the classrooms. They normally leave it on a table or a chair just outside the building. At the intermediate school, if the kids are outside for recess, they're able to leave it in the classroom. But each one of those containers is labeled with the student's name. So it has the student's name and it's a complete meal for that student. And they also leave the spreadsheet with the classroom, so the lunch monitor that's there knows who got lunch and who's whose. So again, we're labeling each one of the containers and setting up and delivering, and each one of those little containers is a complete reimbursable meal. And these ones are all from the intermediate school for one service day. And I believe that is my last one. So let's see if I can figure this out. Perfect. And I think that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Fay. I will tell you the same thing for Mr. Macomber and his team from the school committee. We appreciate the Herculean effort during these crazy times, especially over the summer. I think that if you and your staff did not step up, I think those 50 or 60 students on a regular basis wouldn't get the food that they needed. So definitely a huge appreciation goes out to you and your team. So thank you for that. On the participation numbers that you had there, just a few questions. So for example, you show 39% at FMLS. Is that 39% of the total population or just total of the cohorts that are there?
Total of the cohort that's there.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So we're up to 54% in December. So out of 750 kids or so that are there, we are.
Got it. Yeah, it is a good point. We figure out how to get parents to read, because I know this was sent out multiple ways in multiple forms, that it is free, even posted on social media. So it's surprising that we do have some that come in and they're not aware of it. I know there's a nuance that there are certain things that are free and there are certain things that are additional cost, right? But that'll happen even in normal times, right? So if they want to go up for 3 cookies, they know it's going to cost you more. So
yeah, this literally is a free lunch. And it's hard to get people to believe that, but and we've actually, like, I asked Project Bread because they had given us a couple of graphics to put up before. They had one that was showing that not only is it free, but it helps our program when you come and get lunch. So even if your kids are on remote and maybe you don't need it, just don't make lunch, come get it.
Yeah. And then my last question just related to the financials, the current deficit, going based upon memory, that as we stand right now should be covered by the existing revolving fund in there. Is that correct?
Yes. I think at the end of the school year, we ended last year with a positive balance of around $40,000. So yeah, and I mean, once we add the first grade back in, we'll work on it. We almost broke even for the month of December, which is really exciting. So once we add that first grade back in, I think we'll start to edge up there. I think we'll be okay by the end of the year. I think we'll probably end up breaking even by the end of the year. Especially since this is not special to our district. We've had a lot of conference calls and a lot of trainings and a lot of meetings that it's everywhere. Every district is fighting to make people aware that lunches are free and to get people to participate. So when the state gave us the additional $5,000, they know that a lot of people's lunch funds are in a deficit. So I think that there could be additional funds like that coming.
Too bad we can't put this little note on the report cards or something, but open up to any questions by the committee. Ms. Ramsden.
Thank you very much, Andrea. It is a Herculean task that you and your staff have undertaken, and thank you. We appreciate your efforts. I'm wondering if there's any way to recoup any of the costs for the additional packaging or staffing from any of the CARES funding that we've received. Is that a possibility or no?
So we have, I gave Kara all the information on the carts and stuff that we purchased. And I've asked for velocity reports for all the styrofoam packaging, like the takeout containers and the cutlery and stuff like that from our purveyor. So once they give me velocity reports, I'll be able to put that in for reimbursement too.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Mr. Clark. Looks like you're on mute, Mr. Clark. And then you're up. All right. There you go.
First of all, I agree with Laura. It's a Herculean task, and congratulations for what you're doing. I just wondered, have you looked into any other container besides styrofoam? It seems like we're disposing of a lot of styrofoam, which is not particularly good for the environment, as you know. Have you looked into any paper or cardboard containers besides styrofoam?
So there are biodegradable ones, and we do have some paperboard options available to us. However, they are like quadruple the cost. So as of right now, the styrofoam is the most economic decision. It's not the most environmentally friendly decision, unfortunately. And normally at Assawamsett, for example, we have a dishwasher, so we would be able to use the hard plastic trays and we wouldn't be using styrofoam like this. But so there are options available, but they are just kind of out of our budget right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Owen, if there are no additional questions, I just, as several of the board members, I think representing all of us, would just want to thank Andrea and her staff. It's been an incredible spring into this year, and been very flexible and patient in relation to making some adjustments as we've added students, brought students back, changed locations and all those. So there's a ton of credit in relation to providing food service program for our kids and staff. And so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda under old business, item 6A, FY21 budget.
Good evening, everyone. Including in your packet is the general fund overview for FY21 year-to-date through December 18th, 2020. The revenues of $18.2 million and expenditures of $15 million approximate those when compared to the prior year. As the year progresses, I will continue to closely monitor the results of operations compared to the budget. As an update to the anticipated revenue resources, Chapter 71 Transportation, which was originally budgeted at $1.4 million, this was reduced by the state recently of $291,000. The state made this adjustment as a response of reduced actual transportation costs from FY20, resulting from our schools closing earlier than normal. Also, on the assessment sheet provided, I have made an adjustment to the original circuit breaker revenue resources expected, which we will be required to utilize in entirety. Our entire FY20 fund balance carried forward of $780,000, which resulted of an increase to the original budget by $260,000. As a result, these two adjustments essentially offset each other. An update to our Federal CARES Act, which has funded our PPE and other extraordinary expenses. Our original funding period was set to expire on December 30th, 2020, and we have recently been provided notification that it was extended through December 31st, 2021. That's great news for our school district. However, it doesn't automatically provide us with more funding. Up through December 2020, we had been very successful working with our towns, securing additional funds. We will start this process working with Freetown and Lakeville to see if they can provide any additional assistance beyond December 2020. It is our expectation, based on previous conversations, that Lakeville may have additional funds to assist us, and that possibly Freetown's funds may have been fully utilized with their prior commitments to us and for other uses. As it relates to FY21 COVID-19 financial transactions, I am pleased to report that we have had $943,500 of approved funding, which includes $338,000 from the town of Freetown's federal CARES funding. Also, we have anticipated funding of approximately $917,000, of which we have already applied for $285,000 from the Plymouth County CARES funding as it relates to our enrollment in Lakeville. We have now officially also applied for FEMA funding for the first time as a district. There is only a remote possibility, however, of receiving funding. The FEMA funding has not truly been supportive for efforts made to reopen or continue the operation of our schools. Instead, it is intended to serve for events due to closures. However, we will still attempt to secure funding, which would range from $50,000 to $100,000 if we are successful. Our FY21 COVID expenditures are anticipated to be about $1.9 million, which includes an estimate for remote learning for the spring at similar levels compared to the fall. We will readjust these figures as we know those enrollment figures. For FY21, as it relates to our transportation contract, we were able to execute an amendment to accommodate for billings as it relates to the number of days we are utilizing transportation services. The reduction in school days from 180 to 170 days based on this amendment will translate to a savings of about $80,000, for which we would be paying at a discounted rate of 40%. As detailed on the second page of the COVID summary report, there are other discounts provided for short-term closures, midterm closures, and long-term closures. This will allow the district to engage in savings in both the event of a shutdown as well as if we have remote learning snow days. As it relates to transportation, we are also looking closely at our day rate per bus and comparing that to other similarly sized districts with a Tier 3 contract. This should enable us to better understand the pricing components as we will soon be going out to bid for transportation services. That concludes my FY21 update. If anyone has any questions.
Mr. Owen, I don't know if the committee has questions. I just would please note some of the detail, some impressive innovation and creativity there by the new Director of Finance to either capture grants and or secure some funding. And so she didn't note that, but in that fine print, we've really set ourselves up well moving forward in a tough year. But I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Owen.
No, agreed. That's a great work there. I just want to make sure I understood what you said earlier. We did have a balance in Chapter 70 that we need to utilize this year. So that way we'll basically have no funds available in that account. Am I understanding that correctly?
Circuit breaker?
Yes, the circuit breaker, yes.
Yes, so we would have our current year revenues going into the fund balance that I haven't even added into that budget. So actually we have 700,000 available plus the 400,000 we'll be getting this year. So really we would have 1.1 million, but I'm hoping that we can carry forward the current year revenues of 400,000 to use for next year.
Got it. Okay. All right. Okay.
So we do have a little cushion.
Yeah, the cushion helps, especially with some unforeseen costs. We ran into that a few years ago. So, okay. Any questions on FY21 by the committee? Okay. And the only other piece is the approximately 80K savings in the transportation. Is that something that we can utilize this year, or does that have to go through E&D?
So it will be a savings for this year, but technically it won't be available through our budgeting process until it hits E&D for next year.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to 6B, FY22.
Included in your packet is a summary of the status of FY22 budget preparation efforts. The school district is once again taking efforts to create an inclusive budget process where the principals and directors who have certain responsibility centers are fully engaged in the budget development process. We have conducted our initial budget request meetings with each principal and director, with the superintendent, and are in the process of preparing our initial budget request summary. As far as scheduling, we had originally planned for a February 3rd preliminary FY22 budget presentation, which we believe is still an achievable target date. So we just wanted to mention that as well.
Mr. Owen, if I may, in addition, Kara's right on target there. We're in the budget process. We've been in contact with the towns in relation to that February 3rd presentation as late as this afternoon. A couple of things I'd just like to note for the committee for consideration, though. As we present that initial budget on February 3rd, I do think we're going to have a little tighter timeline potentially. And we may have to take a look at our current schedule for a public hearing, which is on April 14th. It's my understanding in conversation with the Board of Selectmen in Lakeville that they do intend to, as of right now, have a May 10th town meeting, which is about a month earlier. And if that's the case, we may have to have we are going to have our public hearing probably moved up to one of those March school committee meetings, either the 10th or the 24th, probably squeezed in there, regional FinCom, obviously, Steve, with as it relates. But I just want to bring that to your attention. Kara and I will work with the towns. We believe the February 3rd initial schedule of presenting to you the initial budget is fine, but we probably have about a month time frame because, as you recall, the public hearing is when you vote on the budget, and then you are obligated to send that number to the assessment to the towns 30 days prior to town meeting. So if you back up from the May 10th as opposed to the June, it requires us to most likely have that vote taken sometime in March. It's not a decision that has to be made today, but at our next school committee meeting and probably through regional FinCom, I would suggest, Mr. Owen, that you work with Kara and me and we kind of take a look at what makes sense relative to that. But I wanted to make sure the board members are aware. Kara and I are right on top of it in relation to the February 3rd, but it most likely means that we may have to reschedule that public hearing to an earlier date to allow for all the essential requirements for the budget. I'm sure Kara can answer any questions if there are any 22 questions at this time.
Not surprised about the Lakeville town meeting. That's something that they made us aware last year. I guess the only surprise is how quickly they'll be able to move. I figured there'd be some delays with not having a town administrator in both towns, right? So I'd be curious to see how that process moves along. So, okay. Any other questions by the committee on FY22? Okay. It'll be a tough one, that's for sure, but we'll figure what that is. Moving on to new business, item number 7A, COVID-19 report.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. So my COVID report, I did provide to the committee just some bullet point. Considering we're in a remote platform, I thought it would be a little bit easy, at least if you saw some of the notes. That way, if you had generated questions specific to it, you could see kind of where I'm heading. And I'll try to synthesize or keep it a little shorter than the actual document that I shared. But overall, what I would say is we've had continued success in the schools with the current model. We're in 2021. We're 5 months in, 68 school days, right? Keep in mind 170 days, so we're 85. So we're closing in on the half year. The calendar, the current hybrid model has been updated through Friday, April 2nd. Town COVID trends continue to have us in the red in both categories. In fact, significantly higher numbers in both positivity in Freetown and Lakeville. In December, as folks know, we returned 185 kindergarten students with 91 additional K students to full in-person. 125 students overall had been added from that previous meeting. We then continued to examine to target other populations, special education, high needs, specific requests, struggling, and grade 1, as was referenced earlier. And we have a target date of a full in-person instruction model at both AES and FES for Tuesday, January 19th, as we did. And as I indicated in December, we were looking to do when we brought back our kindergarten students. In addition to that Tuesday, January 19th, grade 1, full in-person for both AES and FES, we are also reaching out to all special education families across the board, district-wide, and inviting them back for full in-person. So that's that other half of those students that weren't in the initial high needs category. And that target date, to be consistent with the semester break at the secondary level, will be January 25th, 1 week later. It's actually not 1 week later, it's about 6 days later. So those special education students will be invited back, have been invited back by administrators, or in the process of being invited back to full in-person at all schools. So that, and that's Grays, that's the middle school, that's the high school. In addition, this does involve the use of some 3-foot spacing in addition to 6-foot spacing as it relates to lunch and recess. It takes a lot of logistics. As I pointed out, the plan, and I haven't really deviated from that plan from the beginning of the year when a lot of folks wanted to sit in the remote model. We went with a hybrid model, had some success. We're slowly and gradually rolling out the plan. I will just kind of project out for you a couple of other target dates. This month, we're looking at grade 1 and special education students. After the February break of February 22nd, we'll start targeting some other populations. And then one more, hopefully larger target population will be after the April vacation. So we've kind of penciled in, and my administrative team is going to take a look at the success that we're having with bringing more and more students. I don't think there's anybody who would argue that obviously if we can do it safely, having students come back in person is the ideal circumstance as we move forward, but we need to do it gradually and certainly calculated. And I feel we've done that. We continue to really be transparent, and I hopefully parents in the community take advantage of our dashboard, daily updated, really almost an hourly update. We've had 66 positive cases over the course of 68 days, right? And the vast majority of those positive cases have happened outside the school. In fact, they're consistent with state numbers. We have not only the dashboard up there, we have the town COVID numbers and the DESI numbers. So again, very excited. I was interviewed by Channel 10 today, although I think some other breaking news may trump, well, let me just rephrase that last statement, may take over a little bit more than Superintendent Madeira is talking about the Abbott test. But I was interviewed because we're one of 5 school districts that's looking at antigen testing for our students and staff. And we're pretty excited about that. We're registering our staff this week and families. I participated. And it just gives one more layer of certainly safety as it relates to having our kids come back and making sure that we can contact trace and check on close contacts. So overall, a couple other exciting things as it relates to the COVID. Winter sports season, I shared through a text last night with some school committee, both of our basketball teams, one at Barron and one at home. We are the only school district, by the way, that is allowing at least one representative of the family to attend the game out of the entire South Coast Conference. So we actually get a family member to attend within the state guidelines. Both girls and boys basketball teams won. My understanding is the first virtual swim meet is going to take place on Monday versus Old Rochester. So we're participating there, getting some real sense of normalcy back in our schools. And it's exciting to see the kids. I went into to really say to the Lady Lakers the other day, hey, good luck. You're going to be our first victory at home. And they went out of their way just to thank us for allowing them to even have the opportunity to practice every day and play. So it was just a nice, respectful interaction. Pat's going to speak to TECA in her presentation, so I won't capture that piece that's in my report in relation, but we're excited about the 155 families that are participating for the second semester sign up, and she'll speak a little bit to the survey and the communication that's going out there. Just some quick DESI reports, and then I'll open it up for questions. We took advantage of a remote learning day in December, was very successful. MCAS is being altered slightly, so they are intending to have a modified spring assessment, and I'll have some more information probably for you at the next school committee meeting. A couple of minor things. We're looking at some additional substitutes in nurses and teachers and paraprofessionals, and I can tell you a cadre of talented individuals we've pulled in the last months, and they have been our college students that are remote and are home in Freetown and Lakeville, that have offered services to provide some support as lunch recess monitors, as paraprofessionals. And I can tell you, these kids are coming in extremely professional, filling out the paperwork, and Renee can attest to this, and are going to work the next day. So they're spending some time getting some real life experience and providing us some additional support. I can tell you that it's been a great benefit. Nice to see some of our returning students. Of course, almost all the instances they're so looking forward to going back to their campuses though in schools, and as much as they're enjoying their home piece. But next school committee meeting, we do have the program of studies for the high school and Dr. Starkey and Jim Cabusio. I'll bounce it back to you, Mr. Owen, and the committee that, because I know there may be some questions as it relates to some of the things I've mentioned here. But we're excited and we feel we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you. I do want to just highlight one key upgrade related to the sports is that live stream capability of the basketball games, right? So I know we're allowing one parent, but the community, it's usually a packed house, right? So the community be able to see that in these times is a good upgrade in that gym.
Yeah, that was something, again, we're the only district within the 10 schools that participated and took on that as well. And I know that families, we're actually trying to get some numbers, Mr. Owen, for the committee. Mr. Gusso is going to work on that maybe at his presentation at our next meeting, just to share how many families are taking advantage of that participation, are able to see those live, those events live. And LakeCAM is working with us to record them as well and put them back out there for families too.
Related to the vaccine or the testing, where are we in the notification to parents as far as if they can opt out and those types of?
So that correspondence is, thanks, Steve. Great question. This week we're registering all of our staff. It's a voluntary piece, right? There's a very quick process. We're going to be sending out those notifications through the schools next week. We actually already have a draft letter that will go out explaining what the expectations are. And again, it's a voluntary piece, but it will allow for families to make a quick determination to register their children if in fact they're symptomatic, come to school and want to be tested. It is a 15-minute test. You get the results. I actually got my results yesterday in 10 minutes. Mrs. Barron happened to be in attendance when he came in to sign some documents to see that. So to answer your question on Mr. Owen, next week families and in the community will be notified with a little background and explaining what the steps are if they would like to register their children in the event that they do want them to get tested, or they can opt out and not volunteer as well.
Okay. And then related to, you talked about the program of studies, would Dr. Starkey be in attendance or part of that of the next school committee meeting? I know there's been a lot of questions around SAT alternatives. Can we provide some sort of update at that session? Just I know that's a hot topic for a lot of our high school students.
Yes, I don't have an update for that, but I can make sure that Dr. Starkey provides an update as part of her presentation next meeting.
Great. Any other questions by the committee? I see Miss Barron has her hand up.
First of all, and I talked to Rick yesterday about this, I'm sure we're all thrilled that we have some dates here. There's some more kids coming back. I'm sure you're seeing, as certainly I am, there's lots of information, publications coming out about the damages that are being done if we don't get our kiddos back to school at every grade level. Those of us in education know about developmental milestones. Theorists such as Vygotsky and Piaget and so forth say that there are different developmental stages that have to happen at a special time and special age. Some of those are not being attended to right now. It's no one's fault. Certainly not our teachers' fault. They're doing a wonderful job, but the social and the cognitive together are suffering. And I'm just really pleased because, as I spoke to Rick yesterday, the long-term damage of keeping these children out could be lifelong damage. Some of these kids, if we don't get them back, get them active, get them thinking again, critical thinking type of skills with one another, face-to-face, small groups and so forth, they're going to lose some of what they're going to need in adulthood. So I, for one, am just thrilled that Rick is moving. He's given us some good dates, some target dates. We all understand that they are just targets. We may have to move them. They could be moving targets, but at least we can see where we're headed. And I'll segue that to, I think one of the things that I would like to see our committee do is to put a congratulations out to our bus drivers too. You know, the other day it wasn't the other day, it was about 3 weeks ago. It was a dark afternoon, about 4:20. And I watched the bus driver. She had on a big winter coat. I was stopped waiting, and she had a big winter coat on and a scarf and a mask. And she was letting the children off of the bus. And I thought to myself, and then she's going to go back in the dark. She's going to be cleaning off her bus. She's going to be disinfecting. We've lots of bus drivers out there that are disinfecting all the buses. I think we really need Mr. Owen, I'd really like to see the school committee send a thank you to our bus drivers because they've done just a great job. As Andrea did, You know, those folks out there in the cold and all the rest are sanitizing those buses all by themselves, sometimes in the dark of night and now probably sometimes in the dark of the morning. So if you might consider doing that, Steve.
Yeah, I think we can work through something like that. Good point. Any other questions by the committee? Mr. Sylvia.
Just a comment and to follow up on Sherry, Rick, and through you to your team and building administrators and teachers and to every department. Thank you for the safe and targeted plan and the upcoming dates. And specifically, I know we've been talking a lot over the last couple of meetings about getting special ed kids back in across all grade levels. So I appreciate your emphasis on getting that done this month.
Thank Ms. Sylvia. Thank you. Certainly on behalf of the entire, I know Liz will speak specifically to that, but we're excited to see some of our kids come back, and we feel we're doing it in a safe manner. And believe me, there's some anxiety, and I have to recognize that with all stakeholders. And as Mrs. Barron has said, and Mr. Owen has said, listen, we've set these penciled in dates, but we can make adjustments either way, whether it be remote and or continue to expand. But we're cautiously optimistic. Keep in mind, folks, as I said to many of the school committee members, in the fall, people were a little apprehensive about the hybrid model. Now people have really embraced that and gotten comfortable with that, right? Folks didn't want to come back to school and said we need to be remote, but we've accomplished that. And I think we'll get the comfort level in relation to more and more students. A lot goes into the transition, bringing back more students. I need you to know that. Transportation included, lunch, recess, coverage, safety. We feel we have all those things in place, and I'll continue to keep you updated. But certainly this committee, I have to recognize that with Liz Curlin and her group, really did push to see that those kids who are on plans and in need of services get back as soon as safely possible. And hopefully the plan that you heard from me tonight, and it's been outlined for several months now, demonstrates that. So thanks, Steve. I'll be sure to share that with my staff as well.
Any other questions?
Just one more comment, Steve. Rick, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but the state on the state learning time, I saw it in the packet. I don't know if you mentioned that as part of your remarks. How did we do in terms of the state on that?
So that's going to be the next item, which is 7B, and I'm going to touch upon that, Steve, because I'm thrilled to give that information. I just did the co-report, and I'll update the student learning time in the next agenda item.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks.
Good segue, though.
Yeah, I will just close that COVID piece. That a lot of work is going in there, especially with conflicting regs coming from the state. We run into this tonight by having a Zoom meeting instead of an in-person meeting. But we're having our kids go to school. So there's definitely a lot of conflicts that our state reps are not really helping us out with trying to make things safe for everybody. So
Steve, before we make that segue to student learning, I do want to, if you don't mind, just to piggyback those comments. That staggered approach that I have is taking into account that the state is going to step up in relation to transportation restrictions and some other things that need to happen, because as we bring more and more students in, we're obviously going to have to do it in a safe manner and hope the state works with us as it relates to that. But we feel the way we've kind of mapped out the time frame that will happen.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on to item 7B? All right, Mr. Medeiros.
Thank you. So Steve made a great segue into 7B. 7B is the student learning time. This is out off the press, right? We have new guidelines and expectations that the state has, and there are a lot of districts right now that are scrambling. We're not in that scrambling mode. The work that we did in October, November, and December, and even prior to that, to be sure that we were providing instruction, live instruction synchronized. So we are a district that meets not only the old requirements, but the new requirements as a district. I did provide you, I know you've had multiple presentations tonight, but I did provide the committee in advance of this meeting, the PowerPoint, the breakdown. We as a district on average exceed the much more stringent and expectations as it relates to making sure that our students are getting synchronized learning, asynchronized learning, and certainly the fact that we're bringing back more students obviously is only going to increase our numbers. And when they come out with the next survey, we'll be in better shape. But we, along with many other hybrid models, a lot of people were critical initially, if you recall, of my 1 week, 5 day, 5 in and out cohort. And as it turns out, I've had more compliments on the health and safety and well-being of our kids as a result of this cohort, but also it certainly maximized the amount of hours and instruction that we could provide for those students. So that's kind of the real quick, short version. I know you've had a lot of multiple lengthy presentations tonight. I am extremely proud of the leadership team, Pat Kablinski and the principals and the assistant principals and the teachers. It is all of that hard work in September and October and following what the state is that allows us, unlike some of our neighbors, to not be scrambling now and have to make adjustments to our teaching schedules at all the levels. So we're very pleased about that. And it's something, it's great because I would not, I don't envy some of my colleagues that have to make some significant adjustments to teaching schedules right now to address the needs. We're right on target. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions. But as a district in our hybrid model, and certainly as we bring more students back, we will not only meet the requirements, but we'll exceed them.
Any questions by the committee? All right, seeing none, we'll go on to item 8 on the agenda, reports to the committee. Director of Finance.
Yes, so the only additional item that I'll be reporting tonight is in relation to the train project. So included in your packet is a summary of the train project. As an update from that report, which was provided in mid-December, I'm just going to give some additional details. To date, the performance contracting project appears to be running smoothly. The high school has 2 new boilers with domestic hot water plant under construction, and the intermediate school has 1 new boiler completed with the domestic hot water plant construction has currently began. The middle school, one of the original boilers has been leaking, so Train has been asked to expedite this boiler replacement as the next phase of their work and to pause what they were working on, which was the domestic hot water plant at this time. The lighting projects at the middle school and Grace are about 80% completed. The high school lighting project is underway. The middle school and intermediate school, the electrical transformers were replaced at the end of December. So that's just an update from what you have in your packet for Train.
Steve, you need to unmute. There you go.
Any questions for Ms. Lees on the Train project? The only thing I would request, Ms. Lees and Mr. Medeiros, is at some point we should, lack of a better word, market this to our 2 towns because there's a lot of value into this project, and I'd like to see potentially before and after pictures and just a couple of bullet points as far as what the communities will benefit from with these buildings and the upgrades, and these are major upgrades. So this is great information for us, but I do think we need to probably have an agenda item that really highlights, specifically for the students in our district, but also for the towns.
Ms. Dolan, you couldn't, I'm sure Kara and I can put something together on that. I couldn't agree more. I think we underestimate, or the communities would underestimate if they see the value. It's incredible. In fact, it's so timely with the pandemic and the need for efficiency. There's so many facets of what we're doing that we were ahead of the game, and it's working out quite well. But I agree. I think a more formal presentation we can set up with the director of facilities who's overseeing a lot of that with Kara is something we can do in the near future.
Okay. All right. Moving on to, was there anything else, Ms. Lees?
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Great. Dr. Kablinski.
Next Friday, on January 15th, we'll have a half a day of professional development. That professional development will be provided by Dr. Khalees Warnham, and she'll be giving us an introduction to cultural proficiency. this professional development opportunity is going to address the goal of providing annual professional development on diversity, equity, and inclusion that was outlined on June 24th, the Freetown-Lakeville Regional School District School Committee Anti-Racism Resolution. So annually, we will provide this. Dr. Warnham comes highly recommended. She had provided this type of training and presentation to the Superintendent's Association of Massachusetts and also to the Stoughton School District and a few other school districts. She works for the Brookline Public Schools as well as has her own diversity company that she provides her expertise to throughout the state of Massachusetts and even beyond. So that'll happen for all staff from 1 to 2:30 in the afternoon on the 15th.
Pat, if I don't mean to interrupt your presentation, but just to add to that, she was the keynote for maybe some school committee members participated in the joint school committee superintendent's conference this past fall too. So she comes with a ton of talent. We're excited about that.
Sherry?
This is professional development on Zoom, Pat?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Google Meet?
No, Zoom.
Zoom.
It'll
So
be Zoom, yeah.
School committee can sit in?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that whoever wants the link, that we get it out to you. You include you in it. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. And then it's TECA time. So we're getting ready to enroll for the second semester. We sent a survey out in December asking our TECA families what they wanted to do moving forward, what educational choice they wanted to make for their students. We received over 200 responses. And so the people who did respond to the survey were put into our spreadsheet. We have those names and we are now in the process of enrolling them into TECA. So the enrollment period ends on January 20th. The next semester for TECA begins on January 27th. So once the enrollment period ends on the 20th, the TECA families will then get information from TECA as to what the coursework is, how to get it loaded, what their login information is for that. And then, so we had 155 families, students returning back to TECA. Once we solved a lot of the issues that were going on in September and October, people get into the hang of it. I think they're happy with the product now. Those were the kinds of comments we were getting that I did share with you in the report. 43 students have decided to come back from TECA into our hybrid model. So all of those principals have been, I have reached out to them. They're aware of who the students are, and they are now contacting the families to let them know who their teacher is, what the process is for returning to school. The cost of that is $1,270 per student, which will be less than what it was costing us in the fall. But right now it's a pretty fluid process, but it looks to be about $197,000 right now, depending on, according to the numbers that we have.
And Pat, if I may, just for purposes, that's about 68%. I know an initial report, we had some duplicate responses. So about 68% of our TECA families are returning to the full platform for the semester. Kara's aware, working with Pat about the potential for taking advantage of some CARES grant funding to address the second semester as well. We just had that conversation as late as today.
Yes. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Related to TECA, I'm happy to hear that things got better for those families that chose that option. I'm just curious, is it a start from scratch for those parents going from semester 1 to semester 2, or should this be an easier transition?
It should be an easier transition, and for us, it's a rollover. So that we'll go from course A to course B. So especially on the elementary level into middle school, they'll just take the second half of that, of the coursework that they began in September.
And I remember, and I apologize, this may have already been answered earlier meeting, but there was a technology issue that was going to be needed to be addressed on the TECA side before the second semester.
Right,
Have
the
we
Adobe
confirmed that that
Flash
is-
issue.
Yeah, has that been addressed?
Yes, and TECA has addressed it. They've sent information out to us as to how they are addressing it, because Adobe Flash ended on December 30th. So they made changes to their platform, and they took on some other programs that would address the need there. Most of that was a high school level, and it was high school math types of issues, but they did assure us that that got addressed.
Okay. Any other questions by the committee? Ms. Ramsden?
Were there any families that will be new to TECA for the spring semester, or was that an option?
There are a few that are new to TECA based on some significant circumstances that changed for them, for their family. So we did okay that. And in talking to TECA, they okayed it. The difficulty will be that it is, as Steve asked, a rollover. So they have not been part of this from September, but they will have access to a teacher so that they can try to address whatever difficulties they have initially in starting the program. But we did offer it to them. I believe there are 7 families that took advantage of that, and actually mostly at the middle school level for whatever reason. There was just one elementary family.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I would be curious, Dr. Gablinski, at some point, all of these students are going to be coming back to us. Not that they're not part of us, but they'll be coming back to in that case. How do we triculate them back into our information, or even going to that next grade level? There'd be certain students that would be leveled, going up to a new grade level. How would that be accomplished? I know that's a challenging topic to accomplish in a few minutes, but at some point we'd like to hear what that thought process would be.
Sure, and TECA does provide assessments. They do provide progress reports and that kind of information to us. They also do follow Massachusetts standards per grade level. So while it wouldn't be exactly what we taught them, the core concepts should be things that the kids are familiar with. When they come back to us, as with any child, we benchmark, we are constantly progress monitoring, and then we will create plans as teams, school-based teams, to address whatever gaps we see coming out of any of the children that are returning to us from wherever, homeschooling or from TECA.
Got it. In particular, I know TECA doesn't have a language option, so that'll be another net new piece. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other additional items for your report?
No, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Director of Student Services, Ms. Kerwin.
Thank you. Good evening. Happy New Year. As Superintendent Madeira said, we continue to identify students to invite back to attend school full-time in person. We have, that work is well underway, and we will have the hard numbers in 2 weeks for our next meeting. I will say at the outset, the high school, most of the majority of parents invited back have opted to remain in their current program, whether that is hybrid or, most parents have opted to remain in the hybrid and do not want to have any additional remote learning time. The elementary, as Superintendent Madeira said, we are working on those, and parents surveyed have been more apt to want to return to the full-time in person. So not surprisingly, The elementary, you want more in-person time, and the high school is managing better with remote learning or a hybrid schedule. The middle school parent responses to the survey are due on Friday, January 8th. So we will have more hard numbers for, as I said, for our next meeting in 2 weeks. The the budget for fiscal year 22 is well underway. My office met with Carol Lees for a large chunk of time today, and we're hammering out priorities for the next school year in line with trying to maintain an appropriate fiscally prudent budget for the department. We've also, as noted in the report, resumed a search for contracted psychological services. We've had a lot of challenges with having contracted service be able to help us with our workload. That was the backlog from the spring, and then our current workload. We are working through it, but for our psychological evaluations, we're requesting, due to the validity of the testing, in-person testing, and so it's been hard. It's been hard to get qualified and certified staff who want to do that. So we are working through that challenge as well. Some good news. In December, we did get notice that after I reported to you, the committee, on the 2 grant funds that we've had in prior years, although not for a couple of years, the 298 and the 274, both were funded. We applied for those, and we have had the 298 approved. That's a smaller amount for early childhood special ed program improvement, a little over $2,000. And we did receive, or we are waiting for our approval for that grant, just under $20,000 for our district special education program improvement. Under the grant, we earmarked those funds for some instructional technology, contracted psychological services, and software licenses, specifically around our reading program and classroom materials. And this would be rule-based reading, so specialized reading component. And this is also falls within the parameters of the grant because it allows for a hybrid approach, or it allows lessons to be conducted whether students are in person or remote. I know that's not we're looking to more in person, but students can also engage online and practice and repeat and do work on that program at home online. So this will be a benefit, apart from the COVID situation. We will be able to utilize this going forward to enhance our reading program and specialized reading, rule-based reading. Lastly, family engagement and CPAC. We have a meeting next week on Tuesday at 6:30. Will be held virtually. We have a feature presentation by Dr. Allison Flynn. She's our psychologist and teen chair over at the middle school, and she's going to present unpacking a psychoeducational evaluation. So really going through that very burdensome report and all of the different testing and sub-testing, and really explaining that in layman's terms, what it means to parents, and offering a Q&A following the presentation. For the meeting following that, I am attempting to line up our BCBA, Denise Connors, after coordinating with CPAC on topic areas that they were interested in learning more about. So she's going to be addressing strategies and tips around behavior, especially during times of transition that we are currently going through. Lastly, the district out-of-district enrollment census was updated for December. Those numbers are still looking good, and we're proceeding forward through the school year. Any questions?
Looks like Ms. Fox.
Well, a couple real quick ones. You just make sure I get an invite to the CPAC meetings.
Sure.
I may not be able to go. I have a lot of evening meetings, but I would like to attend sporadically at best. It sounds like you have a couple of good ones coming up. So that was one. And then the other was the psychological piece that had me a little nervous. You're having trouble with that, huh?
Well, we're having trouble getting a steady contracted person. So
Yeah.
I've been managing through a lot of different, resources and connections to have our needs met, but I'm still in search for a more consistent person to be able to, to help us with our workload at this time.
Certainly you want somebody who's going to get to know everybody too, but I would imagine that the need is probably a little greater than normal. So I wish you luck.
Thank you. And I will say that the CPACs have all been Zoomed, so I can share with you a link without any issue.
Any other questions for Ms. Carlin? Ms. Ramsden?
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick questions too, and one of them was revolving around the contracted psychological testing. I can only imagine what a challenge that is, especially with kids only in school in a hybrid model as well. Have we been able to meet timelines with regard to the testing, or are we getting behind there?
So the spring timelines, as we know, were all missed, but they were missed throughout the state and throughout the country. And DESE has stated that they're fully, aware of the, impossibility to provide in-person and service at that, during those initial months. We are currently, treading water and meeting our needs. And I am hoping that we can continue to do so. Just this week, I made additional outreaches to some unconventional sources. I contacted William James College, Rhode Island College, and URI that all have school psych programs. I spoke to the program director and asked if they could post. A lot of them have a listserv or job logs for alum. And so if that can get posted there, if someone didn't want to work, a lot of hours, but wanted to pick up a day, we could piece that together with more than one individual. So yes, the answer to that is currently yes, but it is a need I'm trying to fill as soon as possible.
Yeah, I can only imagine the challenge, and I appreciate you thinking out of the box to try to find some additional resources there to meet those needs. My other question was revolving around TECA, and have you had the opportunity to participate in any progress meetings or IEP meetings where they've been involved, and how is that going?
So I haven't sat in on any team meetings. However, this year we're piloting a school psychologist team chair at the middle school. Dr. Flynn, I mentioned earlier. And I have taken over the administrative responsibilities for the middle school. So I actually read and review and sign every single IEP coming out of the middle school. So I have had the opportunity to read in the N1s and the IEPs about so we have our teachers are chairing the meetings for a TECA student, but really all of the, the information and the substance is coming from TECA. So the IEPs have been well written, which means that TECA is providing information that's current on current performance and current needs fairly well. I have not had any complaints that the meetings, that information was not being received back after that initial bump. And so they seem to be going very smoothly.
And they are attending the meetings, TECA? So a representative from TECA is, okay.
Yes. And I believe there's the TECA supervisors also there. So we actually have 2 TECA people in addition to our Free Lake team.
Okay. And a question that came up when you were speaking, has there been a change to the administrative duties at the middle school? You said you were handling the administrative piece.
In terms of some of them, because, in an effort to, we did put in for school, we requested additional resources last year. And so we did not receive those. So one of the ways to help, get to this problem of being able to meet our evaluation and our team meeting and procedural needs was to do a pilot this year at the middle school where we have a person with experience doing this at several other local communities. And we're piloting this year a psychologist team chair and then additional administrative oversight through me. But it's not a change. It's just a pilot that we're using to save resources and try to maximize our resources to get the most bang for the buck, if you will.
Okay. We still have a coordinator in the central office that handles grade. Is it still 4 through 12?
No, so that is part of the pilot. And the workload was just not manageable. I think, harkening back to, before my time when the roles were split up, which I know that everyone is aware of. So Ashley Boulay is at Grace. So she's doing 4 to 5 and the high school. So 9 to 12 plus.
Okay.
That is still in place.
Yeah. Okay. I think for a long time, the committee has talked about looking at those roles and maybe restructuring that in a more equitable manner to make the workload more manageable. It's a lot for that 4 to 12 piece.
It is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm done. Any other questions? I thought I saw a hand up in the periphery.
Right. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to add
Blum
that
did have.
we for the IEPs, there is the supervisor from TECA as well as one of the teachers from their classroom for TECA.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Further questions? Right, seeing none, subcommittee updates?
I'd be remiss if I just didn't recognize and thank Liz. It's been challenging for all target populations, but this year with COVID, but even more so for our special education students. My only disappointment in Liz's report tonight is I don't see any birthday balloons in the background where she's there. So I'm putting her on the spot there and rolling it out. So maybe some flowers or something of there. There we go.
That? Is this how?
Now that's more of a birthday approach to the meeting tonight. So I just, I'll be paid for that comment later, Steve. Thanks. But nice job, Liz. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy 30th, Liz.
Okay, now Mr. Owen, I know that's not exactly accurate, but thank you.
All right, subcommittee updates, regional finance. We don't have any updates.
No, Mr. Owen, but I would recommend based on that February 3rd presentation, Karen and I talked about maybe reaching out to the towns, and now that we have a town administrator, at least in Freetown, and some transition in Lakeville, we probably should schedule a meeting shortly thereafter, right, between that and that March session, just to be sure we're on the same page. But I would agree, I don't think it's necessary to schedule a meeting at this time.
Okay. Superintendent's evaluation.
I know the subcommittee has the initial packet and we just haven't had an opportunity to pull together, but I think we'll probably do that, if not before the next meeting, certainly into February.
All right. Ms. Barron.
I just wanted to update you quickly on the wellness meeting that was held on December 8th with the nurses, and Mr. Medeiros presided over it. It was very short, about 42 minutes long. The nurses explained what was happening in the schools, seemed relatively pleased with everything that was happening. Probably the only news to report back that I could see for you folks is that our public health nurse has requested to have the high school campus available for vaccine distribution when it becomes available. Maybe Mr. Medeiros, you want to say more about that?
I could speak to that. So I've been in conversation with our nurse leader, Paul Amelia. First of all the nurses have done a phenomenal job. We're rolling out the Abbott testing. They agreed to that and be trained there. We're waiting just for some more information. I think the best news that the nurses heard is they fall into that phase 1 category. The governor has recognized school nurses and they're hoping to get their vaccines actually next week. But I can tell you that in my brief conversations, we're simply waiting for the state to roll out the information, but we will in fact volunteer to be a site, the support of the nurses and school physician in the event that that happens. I mean, I think it may be challenging. We may have some competition, but I think considering where we volunteered for some other things, I couldn't agree more, Sherry, that that Paul and the remaining nurses are very encouraged by that and certainly want to allow that to help out both of our communities. So I'll keep you guys updated as we get more information on that in the coming weeks.
Any other questions or comments by the committee? Ms. Fox?
I want to recognize everybody who has been thanked tonight. You all really, really deserve it. It's been a really challenging time for everybody, but we have food service. We've fed people. We're upgrading technology. There's one person that hasn't been thanked, and I would be remiss if I did not thank Mr. Medeiros for his great assistance with my launch on the food bank. He lifted boxes bigger than anything. The little light ones, I got those. He got the heavy ones, and we had a phenomenal turnout. It was just amazing. So we want to keep this going, but I will say that even on vacation week, Mr. Medeiros was out there with the rest of us idiots freezing, trying to make sure people got food. So thank you.
Jean, thank you. Steve, I just need to add to the group. What it tells me is Jean Fox doesn't accept no, because it was the fact that we pulled off those 2 food holiday distributions to families, and we had significant numbers show out. So it certainly showed the need. Jean, Lisa Pacheco, and many others deserve a lot of credit. I did participate as a willing volunteer, but it was a small piece. And what we're excited about, and Jean deserves a lot of credit for with David Dimash and others, is it looks like we're going to be able to establish a permanent home for the food pantry, maybe in the old police station at Freetown in the coming week. So
that was approved. That was approved. So now we need to keep moving.
Yeah. So in addition to being a part, and you know what's exciting? I think a lot of we've got some more support from the community too. So thanks, Gene. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else by the committee? We do have some upcoming dates with the half day on the 15th and no school on the 18th. And then our next school committee meeting is the 20th at 6:30.
Ms. Doan, if I may,
yes.
On that 20th, I think the question is going to be, is the governor going to extend the restrictions beyond January 11th, and whether we're going to be able to have we'll be required to have, I'm hearing hints that that may happen, which might require this same venue type of setup again, but
okay.
I know, but back to you.
Okay. I'll put on my Mr. Clark hat here, because usually around this meeting time, we talk about senior breakfast. I know that's probably not going to be an area that we could do, or we usually do, but I don't know if there's anything creative just about the Herculean effort that Ms. Fox just did, if there's something different that we could do specifically for the seniors in replacing of the senior breakfasts.
Listen,
not to get an answer right now, but something to think about.
Oh, we did do some of that.
Yeah.
We did. We actually packaged up a bunch of boxes, but it's not anything anywhere near as nice. So we should give this some thought.
I think we could potentially look at some sort of approach though that we've done with our lunch service, and I can talk to Andrea Fay and get back to the committee on maybe something we might be able to do.
Okay. Item number 12, the executive session will be tabled for this. We were supposed the negotiation session was postponed earlier, so we will table that to the next meeting. If there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:18.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Can we do a quick roll?
Sorry. Steve Owen,
Yes.
Jean Fox,
Yes.
Sherry Barron,
Yes.
Jen Blum,
Yes.
Bob Clark, Laura Ramsden,
Yes.
Will Sankowitz,
Yes.
Steve Sylvia.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the 20th.